It's your friend Scott Erickson here with you wherever you're at on this screen. I'm glad to be with you guys and talking about Lectio Divina, which means we all get to be cool and know a little bit of Latin.
I save Latin.
Lectio Divina is just a way of reading the Bible. It means divine reading, and we're going to talk about how to do that. Before we do, I want to give you a metaphor to help you kind of understand what's happening in Lectio Divina, or what is happening in prayer. Now, the metaphor is this. It's a can and a can opener, which we all hopefully have, unless you're maybe a college student and you're like, I've never bought a can opener. I just use my pocket knife, or I just order out food all the time. What I would say, what prayer is prayer is this interior, ongoing conversation with God about the life you find yourself in. For example, have you ever been in your car and you turn on the radio and then a song is on and you're like, ho, 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 this is my song. What are you saying there? What you're saying is somehow lyrically and sonically, this song is perfectly describing what it feels like to be in your own skin. The artist has made something that becomes like a vehicle to this honesty, to this truth. And then you're able to use that song to get in touch with what's really happening. And so what prayer is that ongoing, interior, secret, never-ending conversation you're having with God. Now, it often can get placed inside the hard casing of life, which can come through all the noise of life, our stress, our ego, our fears, and it can get locked in there, and we can't get in touch with that. What prayer is you could imagine this kind of like can opener, and you have these two arms. You have this hold on, there we go. You have, for me, what I have as a visual artist, I have to think of one arm is images and one arm is words, right? And so when we take our images and words, because when we look at prayers and we go, oh, there's these word prayers or these image prayers or these song prayers, that isn't the prayer. That is an excavation tool. That helps you get to the real prayer inside. And so we use words and images, songs, poetry, all of this stuff as a way to excavate that deep, 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 deep conversation that's inside of us. It's when you sing a song and you're like, oh man, that perfectly got me where I'm at. It's when you read words and you're like, that's exactly where I'm at. Or you see some kind of image and it excavates that truth out of you and you're like, it deeply touched me. Why did it deeply touch you? Because it's helping you get to the content inside, which for this metaphor is black beans, because I'm going to make nachos later. And then one more thing before we get to Lectio is that a muse for me as a teacher of the Bible is that the only reason that we tell these old stories still is because they didn't just happen back then, but they're happening today. They're going on today, and we use scripture to help illuminate that story is still going on today. So this metaphor of an excavation tool, what's happening in prayer is we have this deep conversation that's going inside of us, and these stories, this scripture is still going on today. We can bring this to Lectio Divina.
What's that? Oh, it's Latin, isn't it?
And you could look at it in 5 practices. So the first one is reading. You're going to find some scripture that you're going to read, and that's where you start reading. So for an example, let's just take Psalm 23. It's widely known, it's pretty popular, and it's fantastic. So even just the first line, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, or I shall not be in need, right? So we read the scripture. The second thing we do is we meditate, which means we just kind of sit and we think about it. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in need. Okay, what is a shepherd? A shepherd is a caretaker. It's looking after. It's the guardian of these sheep. I shall not be in need. It means that everything I need will be taken care of, that there's this overlooker, this caretaker that's paying attention to my life and needs and my safety, all of that. We can look at other times this has happened in the scriptures. Where has a shepherd showed up? Who has been talked about as a shepherd? What references have been given a shepherd? Has anybody else said God is like a shepherd to me? And so we can use scripture, the whole amount of scripture, to find out what these words mean. And you can go even deeper if you want to read commentaries and word studies and theologians and stuff like that. There's an infinite amount of depth that you can go into in this kind of learning about what these words, why they were written, what they're talking to in the context, all of that stuff. You can go as deep as you want. Then the third part of Lectio is we bring that to prayer. We talk about it with God. We can use sentences. We can sit and just be present with it. We can go, here are the places here. Often for me, when people are like, what should I pray about? I often say is like, start with your dreams and your fears. Your dreams and your fears, because those are two of the things that we're deeply passionate about. What are the things that are scaring me, that like keep me from living? And then what are the things that I want out of life the most? So you could be like, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in need of anything. Well, what am I afraid of right now in this time? What are the things that are getting to me? What are the things that trip me up from being alive today and being free to be generous and be loving, all of that stuff, because I'm wrapped with fear. And then what are the things that I hope for my life? What are the dreams that I still have? What are the desires that are still motivating me? And talk about that. Then the fourth practice in Lectio is contemplation. And contemplation, a little bit different than meditation. Meditation is kind of like thinking through it all and kind of looking at it. Contemplation is really just resting, sitting under the gaze of God. It's a way to like practice being silent. It's to be in that space. Imagine like if you have a really good friend, or even like the family you grew up in, like, you know, you've talked and talked and talked until you ran out of things to say, and then you're able to just sit and be silent with each other. It's not that there's anything wrong, you're just like enjoying the presence with each other. And so contemplation is that like being together. It's just sitting together and letting your gaze be on God and God's gaze be on you, and seeing what comes up, what's being excavated out of this scripture. This scripture is being used as like a can opener, getting through the hard casing around what your deepest conversation with God is. And then the fifth thing that we move from is action. We take this scripture that we read, that we meditated on, that we prayed through, that we sat and were observed by God in, and then we go, how can I do something with this today? Maybe it is to express gratitude. Maybe it is to identify some place that you need to put time into, or care for somebody, or you'll figure it out. That's part of this whole process, is to go, then what do I do with this? Because remember, it's not a story that's happening back then. It's a story that's happening right now. This is why we call it a living Bible, is because this practice of letting scripture excavate us and having it become a doorway where the divine can speak to us then becomes something that invites us into transformation. It invites us to live it out. It's not just history. It's participation. So my prayer for you is that you would find yourself in a story that's not just happening back then, but it's happening right now. And that the words of these holy scriptures would not just be like words on a page, but the actual participation of a God involved with your life, living it out in the world you find yourself in. Grace and peace to you.